Hello minions! I'm happy to speak to you again in our second video devlog about Be My Horde, our upcoming action game where you play as Moriana, a powerful necromancer engaged in battles against forces of good. Before we get to today's subject, quick announcement. The Be My Horde demo is still available on Steam, so we encourage you to try it yourself. Create your horde of undead warriors, stand against waves of knights, and don't forget to share your feedback with us and wishlist the game. Your opinion is super important to us as we're at the very beginning of our adventure. So, last time we talked about the Be My Horde protagonist, Moriana. We discussed how her development looked, what the main idea behind her was, and how she changed in the process. If you missed it, be sure to check it out. This time, we decided to take you on a journey even further into the past and tell you about the very beginnings of the project. What inspired us to create this game? What were the main design challenges? How has the game changed through many iterations? And also, why did most people, after we published the demo, view it as the next Vampire Survivors clone? Yes, let's address the elephant in the room today and openly discuss our inspirations and the differences between influence and ripoff. The spark that gave life to the project appeared many months ago when the founder of Polished Games and the game director, Krzysztof Dedewo, played Diablo 4. In Blizzard's game, you can choose the Necromancer class for your character, but Krzysztof was disappointed with the lack of true necromancing features and army building capabilities. The most alluring aspect of being such a hero, resurrecting fallen enemies to create hordes of undead warriors, was nowhere to be found in this game. It inspired him to think more about this fantasy of becoming a necromancer. He started researching titles that try to put the player in the shoes of a formidable character for whom death is not the end. And yes, there were many games where you play as a necromancer, but Krzysztof hadn't found one that would focus on the most exciting part, building a giant horde of the undead. The only one he encountered which was close was a small, free-to-play title created at the Game Jam, Right-Click to Necromance by Juicy Beast. He had played it before when it was released on itch.io, but this time when he tried it once again after many years, something switched in his brain, giving the start of an idea. Why not make a similar, full-fledged game focused on what was the main fun factor in Right-Click to Necromance? The first problem: what to do to turn it into a bigger title that would be perfect for not just a 10 to 20 minute run, but for hours of engaging gameplay? The solution came from another game, and yes, you guessed it, it was Vampire Survivors. Here's how Krzysztof Dedewo recalls it. That was it. Pieces of the puzzle started to come together, creating an interesting picture. I started developing the first prototype, and 2 weeks later, I had a really fun-to-play proof of concept. I called it simply Necromancer. The first builds were very basic and a little stiff, as is often the case with prototypes. But even in this form, they provided an addictive, engaging gameplay. To get more brainpower, 2 new designers were hired at Polished Games, Michał Hwistek and Jakub Apostolski. The guys started with some extra research, finding other games that could serve as inspiration. Of course, there were titles from the bullet heaven genre, like Halls of Torment, Bone Razor, Death Must Die, but also those focused on the aforementioned necromancer fantasies such as The Unliving, Undead Horde, Necrosmith. With the general idea forged, the newly formed design team had another obstacle to overcome: how not to become a clone of either Vampire Survivors or Right-Click to Necromance. Firstly, the pace. In Ponkel's game, you are constantly bombarded with enemies, upgrades, visual effects. So much is happening on the screen. In Necromancer, later changed to Be My Horde, the emphasis is put on something else. If you're the power-hungry ruler of the undead, you cannot be prey. You need to be a hunter, and so you create an army, and you attack the opponents. You choose where to strike, and if you'll form a properly strong horde, then you are the one unleashing chaos and not the other way around. Also, Moriana herself cannot attack enemies. She can only resurrect fallen knights or peasants, adding them to her squalid company. This is also something that distinguishes Be My Horde from similar titles. Moriana is the embodiment of the dominatrix mommy archetype. She seduces, she allures, she promises, but not enough to fully satisfy. With such a character, it suits the player to be a ruler, a general, a leader, and not a warrior. Thus, we fulfill this fantasy of being a necromancer by putting our zombie-like minions in the spotlight. You're not focusing on action, rather on the proper positioning in the battle, tactics, and at the same time establishing some sort of bond with your army. But of course, we put it in the form of the Horde survival game, although here you are the Horde. The perspective, the time counter at the top of the screen, and events determined by it. All of this we got from titles like Vampire Survivors. All of this helped us to add much more depth to the original concept from right-click to necromance. But of course, when we speak about the design, it wasn't an end to challenges. The next one was something called the snowball effect. Let's think about it for a moment. If you're a necromancer and you can resurrect any defeated enemy, then how is it possible to lose? If Moriana with 100 minions stands against 100 living warriors, then the result is always in favor of our sexy Lich. This is exactly why the Night King from Game of Thrones is so terrifying. And as long as we don't add Arya Stark to the game to ruin a villain developed for 6 seasons, spoiler alert, what do we do to give the player any challenge? The answer is in the mentioned example, numbers. Our design team put a lot of work into the balance. As Jakub Apostolski said when we asked him how they approached the balance, we approached it with pain and sweat. We had to be careful with how many opponents were on the screen and based the difficulty on time management. Players had to be in motion the whole time, expanding their group of minions as quickly as possible to prepare for the next bigger wave of knights. Be My Horde is a constant race with time. It's about finding the optimal way to expand the Horde and not being surprised by a highly motivated group of desperate peasants. And this allows players to find their own ways to play Be My Horde. As Michał Hwistek, one of our designers, says, although Be My Horde may seem like an uncomplicated title at first glance, it offers many hidden mechanics that may take some time to discover. We are also convinced that the best players will come up with combat methods that we have never even dreamed of. A couple of days after the demo's release, one of the players broke our internal army size record, and it was amazing. At the end of the day, what surprises us when we look back is how little Be My Horde has changed from the moment when it was known as Necromancer. The core gameplay loop and the general game idea stayed the same, which is rare in game development. The solid main mechanic allowed us to focus on polishing and juicing up each element of the game, instead of having to add a lot of new features. When we look at it now, the biggest unexpected development was the main character, her personality, voice acting, and the dialogue system. Diablo 4, Vampire Survivors, Right-Click to Necromance, all of those games and even more gave us something to work with, to mix and, in the end, create Be My Horde. But this is not the end. We plan more cool features in the game, and they are also inspired by solutions utilized by other developers. And that's okay in our opinion. Art is something that loves to combine things to give life to something new, giving a stage to our designer, Jakub Apostolski. Every word in every language has been spoken at least once, so you can say that every said word is a ripoff. It is about how those words are mixed and what context they are used in. This gives them meaning and their own personality. Inspirations in any field are vital. They let us build on successes and mistakes of our predecessors, opening our eyes for solutions about which we normally wouldn't even think of. This, in turn, allows us to work with the extract of this field, the essence that has been refined by generations of passionate people, each element containing countless hours of a lot of people, appreciating what history has left us as an inspiration. So, what is ripoff? It is the theft of this knowledge and solutions without first understanding the concepts behind them and applying them where they do not fit at all. So, is Be My Horde another Vampire Survivors clone or the right-click to necromance ripoff? We want to believe it is not. We added so many to it, creating a completely new experience by taking inspiration from the achievements of other developers. But if you decide to think of Be My Horde as another Vampire Survivors clone, that's also okay, because it is an awesome game and it really is a huge compliment for us. What other challenges await us? We don't know. At this moment, we're still adding new stuff to the game and experimenting with various solutions. But we hope you will accompany us on this adventure. Feel free to let us know what you think about this devlog. We're looking forward to making more of these for you. Don't forget to play the demo on Steam and add the game to your wishlist so you won't miss any news. Praise be Moriana!